You're listening to the Resilient Author Podcast, the show that goes beyond the pages to explore the grit, courage, and resilience it takes to write and publish a book. I'm your host, Carrie Human, and each week I sit down with authors to uncover the stories behind their stories, the challenges they faced, the breakthroughs they experienced, and the wisdom they've gained along the way. Whether you're working on your first chapter or celebrating your launch, this is the place to find inspiration and practical takeaways for your own author journey. Let's dive in. All right, Kristin. So, for those who may not know you yet, what's your book about and what do you hope readers take away from it?
The book is about being multifaceted and leaning into that because as humans, we really all are. And if we're not being multifaceted, we're suppressing certain things about ourselves that are really important. And we need to express ourselves early in life and then again later in life. We live a second life in our middle age and beyond. And if we suppress that, our body will turn against us with health issues and other such things. So it's important to explore all your sides and make sure that you're always keeping them in mind. Now, there can be stretches in your life where you're focusing on one thing, and that's fine. But I believe that we are very multifaceted when we're born, and that we should really pursue all the areas of ourselves and not get scared to pursue things because family wouldn't approve of it or society wouldn't approve of it. But we should just go, we're going to follow our heart in multiple directions.
You know, I was really looking forward to having this conversation, and I'm sure we'll dive into it, but there's this huge sort of debate between being multifaceted and just staying in one lane and not doing anything else. So I'm excited to dig into that. But before we get there, I imagine there are a lot of different things that were going on before you actually wrote this book. Where did the idea first come from? Like, was there a specific experience or something that set this into motion?
Yes, I had pursued multiple things. I followed my own advice. I started out as a singer in a rock band, and I got into food science and recipe development from there. And then I got into voiceover, a little bit of acting. And I realized one night I was sitting down, I was actually writing a book of short stories. I thought, I have a literary background from college, and I'm going to pursue that. And I was on my second story, Carrie, and I just realized this is for later. This is not for now. I basically had not a voice, but something just kept knocking on my conscience, saying, you have to write a book, and it's going to be called the JOAT, Life Lessons from a Jill of All Trades. And I had no choice but to follow that through. And a year later, it was born. And it was based on all the different things I've gotten into and the lessons I've learned that I feel can help almost anyone that picks up the book. And you can open it to any page and you will learn a lesson that may impact you, whether or not you're into that particular discipline that I'm talking about at the time, because I address failure in every single chapter and I address how to get back on the horse, which is so important in life because people will turn away from things that they shouldn't because they're scared of failure or because they didn't like how it felt when they failed mildly.
Mm. Yeah, getting back on the horse is definitely an important skill to pick up. So
yeah, I know it's a cliche. There are a lot of cliches in the book, and that's why I make fun of myself for using them. I call my life lessons, some of them, the 3 cliches: passion, perseverance, and putting it out there. We've heard it a million times in self-help, but I want to make a little bit of fun of myself and just have the kind of thing where I'm not that serious, but I'm very serious about my readers learning from the book and learning how to live their life to the fullest.
I love that. So I know that there's a whole nother side to your story, which you're going to get into, but you and I both know, every author faces some form of resistance along the way, whether it's self-doubt, maybe it's perfectionism or just life being life. what would you say was your biggest challenge while writing this book, and how did you move through it?
I am kind of a procrastinator. I just made up a word. And luckily, my husband, who is an author and has been since we met, was writing a book while I was writing a book. And after I finished my recipes for the day, which is how I financed it, I work for women's health and fitness magazines. It was time to write. And because he was so committed, and I'm like, let's go play tennis. He goes, I'm writing. So that really, I realized, well, I'm writing too. You know what I mean? So I've got to say that he was a great influence on me because it really takes a lot of hours, as you know, to write a book. And if it had been fiction, it might have been a little more difficult. But this was nonfiction. And being the fact that it was based on my life, I never ran out of material. It was just making sure that each lesson wasn't just for my family to go, oh, yeah, we remember that, but for a stranger to go, I don't know you, I don't really care that much about you, but I want to learn what you're saying because it's very interesting.
Mm. So, okay, I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit because again, I know that there's a whole nother layer to your story. So, without giving away too much, like, and I'm sure you'll get into this, but how did you feel when your neurosurgeon told you you had to have brain surgery for the third time? Like, can you talk about that process and how all that ties into the book and just your creative
Sure,
process?
sure. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book because it wasn't just me going out in the world and pursuing things that might not have been interesting enough. I actually go so far as to call myself a female Odysseus because of
Mm.
all the challenges I faced at every turn. And like you said, when you say, what happened when you learned about your third brain surgery? That tells the reader or the listener, wow, there were two before that.
Mm.
And that it was it was hard. I remember being in his office and he pulled up the MRI and he looked at it and he said, you're right. Those visual disturbances you're seeing are the cyst has grown back.
Mm.
We're not talking about cancer. We're not talking about a brain tumor that was cancerous. It was just a growth that was in a place where there's a lot of valuable real estate in the brain. And if it was, as it grew, it affected my vision, my balance, and things were starting to go for a third time. He warned me. He said, when people have this surgery a second or third time, they tend not to do well. So that concerned me, but I wanted to be fully functional and I was willing to take the chance. And I said, let's do it again. Now, when you have this surgery, they have to put diodes all over your head days before. So you're walking around looking like a robot. You know, it's so like, it's so, and you realize what's coming up because you have just all over your head. So I went out in West Hollywood and I just said, well, this is me. There's stranger looks in West Hollywood. So it was okay. I didn't feel too bad. And then the third one had some horrible results initially where I was basically seeing everything in quadruple, triplicate, quintuple. And I thought that was forever because the expert that they sent me to afterwards said, I'm sorry, my dear, that's just the way it is. That's your life now. But my husband got involved. He's a sports nutritionist and a scientist, and he put together a stack of supplements that with time worked its magic on my eye, all my myelin, which is something that is very important for your eyes. And it healed them and laid down all the layers. And with time, my vision came back. I went to the DMV and I passed my test. I don't even need to wear glasses to drive. And it was such a miracle. And I was so glad that I told the surgeon I'm going to do it anyway, because I didn't want to live compromised.
Mm. Wow. I mean, I couldn't imagine seeing 3 and 4 on a regular basis. So this like literally became your reality for a moment in time?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It's because he had to tug on my optic nerve so many times. By the third surgery, it had really taken a beating, Carrie. So he tugged on it, but it healed with this protocol.
Wow. That
So
is,
that, like I say, that was part of when I sat there and I said, the JOAT, life lessons from a Jill of all trades. It's not just about how to be a comedian or how to be a voice actor. It's also how to face what life's going to throw at you invariably and inevitably. And I give people a pep talk in every chapter. I defy someone to get to page 252, and this includes my sisters, and close the book and not say, okay, I'm inspired. Let's go. That's the goal.
I love that. And I would love to just sort of stay on this track of just getting more into the book. So this concept of, being a Jill of all trades, it challenged society in a lot of different ways, because again, I think a lot of people are like, you need to focus on one thing, don't be so scattered. How did that identity come to life for you, and how has it shaped the way you move through your creative work these days?
It was kind of forced on me because I think everyone comes along at high school and college and they go, I want to be the GOAT. I want to be the GOAT. I want to be Michael Jordan. I want to be Tiger Woods. I want to play at Carnegie Hall. That's just how we are as teens. We want to be the best of the best of the best. As it turns out, statistically speaking, we can't all do that. So, second best is the JOAT. And I tell people how I used to speed skate with my friend, and she beat me every time in all the competitions. And I realized I learned so many lessons from coming in second and just dusting myself off and going, I'll get it next time, that the JOAT wasn't a bad thing to be compared to a GOAT. And in all my career choices, I never made it to the Grammys or the Oscars, and that was okay too. I also talk about people who have made it that far, who had a lot of stumbling blocks in their way at the beginning, and they came in second place a whole hell of a lot, like Britney Spears and Beyonce. A lot of people early in their career were not given the red carpet, and they had to come back, and that's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us believe in our choices more, because this time we realize, I'm going to avoid that pitfall. Now I'm going to avoid that pitfall. And before you know it, you're walking a pretty straight line and you're strutting in confidence.
That reminds me of that quote, or maybe it's a proverb, get knocked down 7 times, get back up 8, or something like that.
Absolutely. I have lots of those. I start each chapter with something like that because I want people, yes, some of them are cliches, some of them are absolutely wonderful quotes, but I think they all exist for a reason. And if you don't think, yeah, I've heard that a million times, actually think about it. Actually realize why some of these have been around hundreds, even thousands of years, because they deal with the human condition in a way that can really change things for us, because people can get in a funk. They can get down in the dumps, and they need to realize there's so much out there. There's so much out there, and you just need to believe in yourself a little bit and try something. Just do that thing that you don't usually do. Speak up at work when someone else usually takes your ideas and speaks up. Be a little bit more brave. And I feel that this book will gently nudge you to think a little more in those terms.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's one thing to tell people to be a little more brave, and a whole nother thing for someone to just really put themselves out there. I wouldn't say were you born this way, but do you feel like you've always sort of been more on the courageous side, more of a risk taker of putting yourself out there, or did you learn that?
I was a terrible combination of very shy and believed in myself at the same time. So I'm giving myself a pep talk as much as anyone else in this book. So my tendency is to not want to speak up and not want to get on stage and not want to speak up at work. But that's not how to live. We are not meant to dim our light. We're meant to let it shine. That is the way the universe is. We all have a light and we shouldn't cover it. It's so important that we don't, because that's not how we're supposed to live.
Mm. Yeah, that resonates so much. Um, so I was doing a little bit of homework. You have this concept, skill stitching,
Mhm.
and I was just doing some research, and I read that you once pretended that your husband was your boyfriend for an entire year before you guys met. Is that an example of skill stitching? And how does that story reflect your broader approach to blending creativity, risk, and intuition?
In a way, it is a very good example of skill stitching because I skill stitched the whole time. I saw him on television on a TV show, and I decided he would be my husband. And I spoke to my mother and I told her, which I never did. I never talked to her about boys, but I thought this was the one. So I actually called her and told her about it. And she was surprised because she wasn't used to hearing this kind of thing from me. I had no way of reaching him. And I thought he was intelligent and handsome. And I thought he was for me. And I love the way he spoke about nutrition and sports stars. And I decided, okay, he's my boyfriend, even if he doesn't know it. I would save a place for him at Christmas, Thanksgiving. He'd always have a chair there. That's how much I believed this was going to happen. So then I saw him in a magazine, and there was a P.O. box as to how to reach him. I wrote him a letter, and because I put it on a business envelope, it made it to him. Now, I would not have been attracted to someone like this who's, living the high life and tripping the lights fantastic unless I had been a skill stitcher. I had a business, I had a band. I luckily had just had a picture taken for the band. So I was able to show him who I was in the band and how I looked, and that I was really working it out with him or without him. I was going to do something really, really interesting. So I tell people, don't look for someone to save you. Look for someone to be your unbelievable partner because you've built yourself up to a really, really interesting person. And that's when you're going to find your match, your other half who's also very interesting and interested in you.
Mm. I love that. Just making space for it, just calling it in. This or
Yeah.
something better. I love that. I love that.
Love that. Love that.
Is there any skill on your, some people call it bucket list, I'll just say bucket list, that you haven't yet stitched into your talent tapestry?
Well, the funny thing is I always wanted to be an actress, and I got a little chance to do it, um, just happenstance. And I tried it, and I didn't like it. I didn't like memorizing all those lines. I thought, wow, this is harder than I thought. So that was one that I got to disband. Like, no, I wasted a lot of time wishing that I could do that, and it's not for me. I prefer to write. I prefer to, maybe if I wrote my own script someday, but I don't want to say other people's words. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but because there are amazing writers out there, but I think it's more just, I like to feel real emotions. I don't want to pretend I'm feeling them. And there are, of course, other things. I recommend that people write their own obituary once every 10 years and make sure that you look at what you've done and see if you're happy with it so far. It's okay if you're 20 years old and there's a lot missing, but it will really light a fire under you to write it and look at it. Okay, this is me. This is what I've done so far. What's missing? And I still have stuff missing. I'd love to make billions of dollars and just give it away, stuff like that. I love symphony halls, and I want to just make sure that the music stays in schools and just help people. And I'm sure that I'll come up with a skill or something that, I say people in their 80s, 90s, look at Jane Fonda. You should really still be doing amazing things and challenging yourself, and if not jumping out of airplanes, doing something that scares you just enough. I'm not advocating for dangerous items, by the way.
Well, the whole writing your obituary every 10 years, I'm gonna take a page out of your book. That's powerful. I could see how that could really just ground you and just sort of chart you out for the next 10 years.
And I could see how people would, first of all, the word obituary, the word death, none of that appeals to us. And we just want to be on the other side of the room from it. But when you sit down to write it, and I recommend people do it with pen and paper or pencil and paper because it's just so much more tactile and you're more involved in it.
Mm.
All of a sudden, it's not depressing, it's exciting because you've got more time.
Yeah. You're still here. You can still,
Right. Hmm.
still manifest to bring it to life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey as an author. We all have our own publishing journeys. Some are traditional, some do hybrid, others are self-published. Which path did you take, and what was the most challenging or rewarding part of actually getting your book out into the world?
It was because it's my first book and no one was calling because they didn't even know I was an author. I self-published and I realized there's a book called You Are Not an Editor. And I probably should have read that book because it would discourage me from editing myself. But because I'm with a published author many times over, I decided to just lean on him when I had a question and just gut it out, Carrie. And I did. And it took so many revisions because this was not a New York Times, a New York editor. This was me trying to figure out the rules. And I'm sure there's a typo or two, but I think I did a pretty good job. And next time I may not self-publish. We'll see what happens. We'll see where my journey takes me. I'm hoping I get enough attention that some little guy would want to put my next book out and help me with
Well,
the editing.
yeah, your husband sounds like he's got some experience, and that's amazing that he was willing to help with that because editing is, as you know,
Oh,
it's very complex.
I just love, when I saw that you're not an editor, I go, oh my God. Oh, all the little rules and little things. I'm sure I've forgotten half of it already, but when I was in the midst of it, I knew a lot of rules, Carrie.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. So once your book was actually out there, again, I know you've done a lot of different things in your lifetime. Like, how did it
Mhm.
feel to identify as a published author? Like, how did things shift in your work or in your relationships, or just how you even view your own story?
First of all, I felt so excited and amazed by the fact that I had done it.
Mm.
You've seen these TikTok videos when people get their box of books and they open them for all the viewers. I did, I filmed it, but I didn't ever put it out there. I just wanted to know that those books arrived and I had edited them and written it and I was on the cover and it felt so amazing. I, I don't know. It was so rewarding to hear from my friends. They saw me in a new light. They said, some of them said, I always knew you had this in you. Some of them said, I am so inspired. I'm so blown away. Pages and pages and pages came in emails of people telling me what they wanted to do now. And I think that's the biggest compliment you can get. I lit a fire under them and they just wrote pages of things they had done and pages of things they wanted to do.
Mm.
I was so moved by it.
Mm. It's such a beautiful thing and so powerful and unexpected when you express vulnerability and write your story and you sort of catalyze other people to do it. Like that's what it's all about. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's another thing they said. You were so brave to, show your vulnerability because I certainly do that. I certainly show my vulnerability. I tell about a record deal gone south and the horrible night it all came down, crashing down. But I think that's important to show that it's not all bright lights and excitement. There are so many ups and downs in entertainment and in the publishing industry and in sports. And it was just it was important to me, even like someone like Simone Biles, that she was going to quit gymnastics, but she rallied, or Coco Gauff in tennis. They got down on themselves and they thought it was over and they came back and won gold and won, trophies. It's so cool that someone can regroup and come back and do that. So there's always more if you can just rally yourself. And this book is a rallying call at all levels.
Mm. Yeah, I think we can all use a little rallying. Um, yeah, definitely don't want to give any spoilers away. Um, so you talked about this a little bit, Kristen. Resilience, it shows up differently for all of us. sometimes it's discipline. For some people, it's faith. And for me, a lot of times it feels like it's my community. What does resilience look like for you these days?
Well, I agree with you about community. I recently moved back to my hometown. I realized out in California, I didn't have community. I had beautiful weather and I had a beautiful view out my kitchen sink, but I was really lacking that. I say that old friends are gold, but new friends are silver. And I was missing my old friends and not making new friends. Even though I'm a very social person, it just wasn't working for me where I was living. And now that I'm back here, it's so amazing to be back with people I love and who love me. But as far as, inspiration for writing and inspiration for getting back on the horse, I think it's incremental days. You can have a down day and you think, wow, I used to feel so excited about everything and I believed in myself. Every day is a blank piece of paper. What will you do with yours? Someday you won't do anything, but you can't feel too bad about that. You can't feel bad about eating bad for a day, because if you do, you'll go down that slippery slope. You have to say, that was yesterday. Today is different. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do one little thing, one step towards something that interests me, something that will help people, something that will do something to change things up. And there are various ways you can do it, but you only have to take a tiny step toward it. And your dopamine rushes in and you start getting ideas. Okay, now this. Oh, wait, now this. It's amazing how that works. There's a little part of your brain called the AMCC, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. It's a funny name, but serious brain power. And it's right in here. And it will grow like you take it to the gym. If you do things that scare you a little bit, if you do things that challenge you a little bit, if you learn something new, if you try learning an instrument, it grows and grows and grows and almost changes your personality, which is what I was talking about before. If you become confident, you change as a person and your choices will change and your accomplishments will change.
I really love that, Kristen. My wife and I are really into the brain and neuroplasticity and all that stuff. And it's fascinating that there's so many people that sort of wait for inspiration or wait to feel brave and I feel like you just said this, it's when you do the thing, that's when it comes. Like the inspiration comes when you actually take the step. It's not usually going to come before. It's kind of backwards, but it's
Exactly. It is backwards. And that's because we have to take this little part of our brain to the gym and do our little push-ups with it, and it will take over for us. It really will. But just thinking about it or just saying that's too hard or looking at the mountain and going, how am I going to get up there?
mm,
It's step by step.
mm.
And the first couple steps may be hard, but seriously, step 3 and 4, step 5, 6, 9, 10, all of a sudden everything kicks in and you've got wind beneath your wings then.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. It's such a good feeling too when you kind of get
It's so
get through the
good,
fog.
isn't it? It's because that puts out a drug and you're like, I'm feeling it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So this podcast is called the Resilient Author Podcast, and a lot of our listeners are sort of aspiring authors. Some of them have opened up documents, typed a couple words, closed a document, let it sit for a couple years, but they haven't published. They haven't gotten their book out there. What would you say to someone who feels called to write, but something in them just isn't sure they're ready, or they just sort of can't get out of their head?
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for powering through. I know you do talk your book, and sometimes you just have to word diarrhea, sorry for lack of a better word, and you're going to get a lot of junk out, but you'll find something that recurs, themes that recur, a path that starts to form, and just write. It's another cliche I've got for you guys. Just write and don't sell yourself short because you probably have an amazing story in you. And the more you write, it's just like we were saying, step by step, you'll get inspired by a scene and you'll realize, ooh, yeah, I can see where this is going to go. But not if you don't write. Some people think about stuff in the shower, and that's fine, but get it down. Get it when you get out of the shower, dry off and write that down. Get it down, because then you'll be inspired the next day and you'll realize something's forming.
That resonates. So before we close, Kristin, I would love to just know what's next for you. What are you working on? Any new books, any projects, any creative adventures in the horizon?
There's a section in the book called Fooditude, and it's because I've done a lot of recipes for a lot of magazines, and I want to bring the ingredients that we're told weren't good for us a long time ago that are now considered good for us, and try to get people to have very healthy lifestyle with however they eat. I don't care what your particular thing is, vegan, paleo, you can do whatever you want, but I think you should use whole grains, whole foods, unprocessed foods. We hear this a lot, but it's very, very important for our bodies. And there's a revolution coming, I believe. I know you're not in America, but we really need to catch up with the rest of the world. There's a lot of more healthy eating elsewhere. And we're trying to catch up, and I'm with Fooditude going to try and do that. Help people get excited about food and great ingredients and make delicious recipes. Other than that, I want to get into fiction writing. I think it's time. I think this was a little detour. As I told you, I was writing a book of short stories. I want to get back to that and then launch into the great American novel like everybody else.
That sounds fun. Just curious with Fooditude, do you have anything in there for kids at all?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Healthy chicken nuggets, and everything's going to be so good that mom can give them just a little taste of what, the big entree, and they'll be very happy.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on here when you get that out there.
I'd love to. I'd love to talk about it with you.
Awesome. So I'd love to invite you to our lightning round. I've got 5 questions. Just speak from your heart. It'll be fun.
Sure.
All right. Kristin, what's one book that changed your life?
Well, I would say Marcel Proust, In Remembrance of Things Past. It moved me so much. He has a way of giving a sentence that's a paragraph long, and I loved following it. And I loved what he said about music. He said that the song that you hear that you love immediately is not necessarily the song you're going to love. It's going to be the one that's more difficult and hard to get and hard to take in. That will end up being the song that you love the most. Wow. And of course, he talks about smells. I know this is a lightning round. We'll continue.
It's all right. No, you have my attention. What about smells?
He talks about the smell of his little petite Madeleine. When he goes into a bakery, he smells an odor, a scent, an aroma from his childhood. And it brings every memory rushing back from when he was a young boy. And that's what scents will do for us. Our olfactory system can remember a memory like that from a perfume or a recipe or something that you pass on the street. It's amazing how our brains pick that up.
It is amazing. If you could have dinner, speaking of smells, if you could have dinner with any author, past or present, who would it be?
Henry James. Who's my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyone that can write The Turn of the Screw and A Portrait of a Lady. I know I'm going back too far for most listeners, but that would be him.
When it comes to getting ideas out, are you more of a writer or a talker?
I could do either. For the book, I just made a list of all the things in my life and how other people could learn from it. So I actually wrote that, but I could talk too.
Nice. Finish this sentence. Writing my book taught me to
always sit down and write the next day, no matter how the day before it went.
In one word, what does resilience mean to you?
fortitude.
Mm. Well done, Kristin. So this is the final chapter. We're going to close things up. But if you could leave one piece of advice or encouragement for our listeners, something they'll take with them long after this episode, what would it be?
You have a light that shouldn't be dimmed. Don't let anyone dim your light. And don't you yourself, which is worst of all, dim it. It needs to shine.
Just going to take that in. Kristin, this has really been a pleasure. We don't want to give too much of the book away, so we'll have to get everything in the show notes. But before we wrap up, where can people find your book, follow your journey, and keep up with what you're doing?
Everyone can find me at the www.thejotbook.com. There's all sorts of things. There's fooditude there. There's a blog there. And there's a way to reach me. And I'd love to talk to you through that.
Excellent, Kristin. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And yeah, I would love to follow up in a couple months and see if we can get you back on here to see how things are going.
Absolutely. And I'll start working on those kids' recipes, Carrie. Thank you.
Please do.
Good idea.
Please do. Thank you so much for tuning into the Resilient Author Podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you both inspiration and practical tools for your own journey. If you've been carrying the idea for a book, but haven't started, or you've started and feel stuck, I'd love to invite you to join my 5-day Speak Your Book Challenge. In just 5 days, you'll speak the outline of your first draft and discover how to turn it into a finished manuscript and a published book. You can join anytime at voicetobook.co/challenge. Until next time, keep going, stay resilient, and remember, your story matters.
I will.